This episode is brought to you by Groove Washer, the best record cleaners and protective sleeves for your vinyl collection. Ask for the Groove Washer from your local shop or go to groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. And now, on with the show. Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
That's me. Hey, everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 443 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And today, dear people, we've got an absolute legend on the show, an amazing talent, phenomenal drummer, and a really humble, good guy, Mr. Chester Thompson. Now, you'll probably recognize Chester's name on the back of many of your albums in your collection. Chester drummed with Frank Zappa on Roxy and elsewhere, as well as a few other releases out there. Chester was also on Weather Report's Black Market, Genesis Seconds Out, and he was pretty much the touring drummer of Genesis for well over a decade. And good news, Chester discusses all of those artists today, plus more. And he wants you to know about his new solo album, Wake Up Call, chesterthompson.bandcamp.com. Vinyl is available now, and it's only $25. So grab one while you can. Chester Thompson, Wake Up Call, chesterthompson.bandcamp.com. Oh, and I should let you know there is an extended version of this interview with Chester available only to show patrons. Patreon.com/vinylguide. Head up there now, help support the show. That is a huge help. And of course, you get all sorts of extra stuff, commercial-free episodes. The episodes come through early. They're high resolution. And of course, you get extended versions and other fun stuff as well. Patreon.com/vinylguide. Head up there now and help support the show. So, without further delay, let's get into our conversation with drum and percussion legend, Mr. Chester Thompson. Mr. Chester Thompson.
All right, Nate, how are you, sir?
Good morning, good afternoon.
Where are you?
I am in Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, one of my favorite places in the world, man.
Well, they're still talking about you down here. You should come back.
I didn't do it. Let's get it straight. It wasn't me.
Okay. Oh, mate. Well, thanks for making the time. Look, our show is about vinyl records and collecting and, of course, music and various artistic nerdery. You've got such an amazing career in art and music and records. Are you a bit of a record collector? Do you have a record collection?
Oh, we've got a serious collection here.
Yeah? Tell me about it.
If I could take you upstairs. Well, we got two cabinets full. Actually, we put them all in one cabinet. All the shelves collapsed. So I've got to get a new cabinet. And then I've got, then downstairs, I've got a basement. And, oh, goodness, we've got a few hundred. I mean, just covering the gamut. My wife and I met, we both had pretty extensive collections. And, between the jazz, the pop, the rock, it's pretty eclectic as well.
And you have records going all the way back from the beginning parts of your career, possibly before then, yeah?
Yeah. In fact, most of what I did back in the day is before CDs or cassettes. So yeah, there's some things cassettes happened fairly early, I guess. Mm-hmm. They happened around 1967, I think.
Okay. Did you have many records at your house as a kid? Where do you remember which ones you had? Yeah.
Oh yeah, my mom quite a bit of gospel stuff, and some of the black gospel artists, people like Sam Cooke before they became pop artists and stuff, and some jazz things. And then I had older brothers. One older brother that was in the military. He'd always come back with a bunch of fresh jazz records when he'd come home. So
yeah, you keyed into jazz pretty early, and that was a time you grew up in Baltimore, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So there were still a lot of these guys. Art Blakey was still playing.
Absolutely.
A lot of these artists that were still around. Did you have a chance to see any of those greats?
I did. I saw Art Blakey. I saw Max Roach. I saw Elvis Jones. Those were my main heroes. Those were the guys who I really listened to and tried to learn to play like. Yeah, so we had a theater. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Apollo Theater in New York.
Yep.
It was kind of like the soul music mecca. And so Baltimore, there was actually a series of those cities with those theaters. It wasn't just the Apollo. And Baltimore had one of those theaters. So every other week for years and years, there would be live shows coming through. All of the top names in soul music and jazz, some jazz as well. And I went by the time, I guess around the time of 13, I think I tried to go to almost every show. So I saw everybody live. I mean, the early Motown, James Brown in his prime. I mean, it was pretty amazing, actually.
Oh, phenomenal. So early on, when you were seeing those shows, were you already playing music, or was that okay?
I was staring at the drummers and, trying to sit close to the front. And a lot of the groups brought their own rhythm sections, so I'd be checking that out as well.
Okay. And it sounds like your mom, your family were very supportive with music. It was a very musical household, and they encouraged you to pursue your career in music?
Well, it was just my single mom. My father died when I was too young to really know anything about him very much. And she was very encouraging. And she allowed me to start doing the club scene at 13. She knew I wouldn't be a drinker. She knew if I was around it and saw people acting crazy, that would not be something that would appeal to me. And she was absolutely right.
That's a tremendous amount of trust.
Well, I enjoy a glass of wine with dinner, but I've never been a drinker.
Mm-hmm. So at age 13, you were playing, you're still in school. You're balancing school and gigs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every weekend until I graduated high school, I played literally every weekend. I think I took off for the senior class banquet or something, but everything other than that, I didn't have much of a teenage life. I didn't go to parties or dances or have girlfriends or any of that.
Okay, just focused on the music.
I wasn't about to miss a gig for any of that stuff,
And your high school prom, that's probably the last gig you missed too.
Yeah, I didn't do that one either. Well, I did do, it was not on a gig night, so I did actually go to that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone.
Now, as far as I know, your first appearance on record was O'Donel Levy's Black Velvet. Is that right?
Yeah, we were, oh goodness, we grew up together. We lived in, I guess we call house projects, sort of similar to council flats if you're in England, I suppose. It was poor area in that. But we were sort of playing marbles and kids stuff, and he was already starting to play guitar, and we would sort of do talent shows and kind of singing group and all that. And then we both started doing gigs. There was a gentleman in the neighborhood who played sax who I guess had heard him play guitar, and he would sort of, started off doing like frat parties and things like that. And I would get included in some of that. And then I guess my very first club gig though was not with him. It was a different situation. Came through my first drum set teacher. I was at his house and there was a gig he wasn't interested in, and he asked if I wanted a gig and said to the people, "I've got a drummer for you. He's 13, but he can handle it." And of course, they wanted to hear me. I didn't even have a drum set yet, so he took his drums down for the audition. I played. They liked it, and the gig started the next weekend. So I had an uncle that had enough credit to go get a used drum kit, and so that's when it started.
Holy moly! So you're playing throughout school. After high school, I mean, it must have been a foregone conclusion. Clearly, you're on the path to being a gigging musician.
Yeah, I never thought of anything but. I did try to get jobs. I went and applied for regular jobs and stuff. And no one would ever hire me. I was never, ever hired for a job. And at the last minute, when I needed money, it was like a gig would come through. So it's like, okay, well, I guess this is it.
Right. Okay.
Not that I wanted to do much else anyway, but
Now, and then O'Donel Levy, he had a deal with Groove Merchant Records.
Right.
What do you recall about that? Playing on that record, producing that record? Yeah.
Well, I think I did about 3 with him. We had a band together at the time. We basically played. We were probably in 10 bands together during those years. Long before we had the record deal or any of that. And so when he got the record deal, I think we did the first one in New York, I believe. I think we did all of them in New York, as a matter of fact. Um, it was great. It was we had done a local recording. Baltimore was only like 40 miles from Washington, D.C. And so it's like a 35-minute ride over there. So the first recording was a local thing we did that was released just locally, which was my first time in the studio. So by the time we did the album, this was much higher level, of course, but it wasn't that terrifying very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And we already played all the material together on gigs, so it was fairly relaxed. I haven't heard that record in years. I'm almost scared to hear it at this point.
Did you make appearances on like singles or other artists just playing one-off recordings?
Not really, just the band that we had together. There was not a lot of. There were a couple of local groups that did. A couple of them got fairly well known even eventually,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I wasn't a part of that. There was a lot. There was mostly live playing in those days. Like I said, just lots and lots of gigs. It was when I moved to LA that I really started getting into a lot of recording and working with different artists and stuff.
Got it. Okay. And we'll get to that in a moment. The one thing I'd just like to know is once you had yourself on record, your first time on record, Black Velvet, you sent that back to your mom. That must have been a very proud moment for you.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it was. I wasn't. I'm trying to remember how I felt about it at the time. The very first recording in Washington, D.C., the little local single, I hated the sound of the drums and all that. I was used to a really high pitched sort of jazz tuning, and I realized, okay, this is different. The music we did was not jazz, and that tuning was totally not appropriate for it.
Which record was that?
I think we did an instrumental version of the Tom Jones hit, It's Not Unusual. I think that was our first local sort of record. And just a local single. I forget, I don't even remember what we put on the B-side. Yeah, it's like, it was my first real introduction to really paying attention to sounds and realizing that, you got to really make the drum sound the way you want, So I think, yeah, I guess now that you've mentioned, I'm going to have to go pull that record out and go see what it sounded like.
Well, just as you were talking that, I just did a quick search. I can't find it either. So yeah,
I doubt seriously if you'll find that one. Yeah, it wasn't like a known label or anything like that. And
it was with O'Donel Levy, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I doubt if I can't even remember what group name we were using in those days. But I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was just a tiny little local label. I don't know that it lasted very long or.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'd be absolutely shocked if you found it somewhere.
See, these are the exact sort of challenges I love, Chester. So, yeah. All right. So you're on the East Coast. You moved to the West Coast. What precipitated that move?
Well, I went with a gig. I didn't move there to try to make something happen. I had gotten the audition with Zappa, and he liked my playing, and we started rehearsing that day. Started preparing for a tour immediately.
Now,
this was later. This would have been 73. Straight out of high school, I went on the road, cover bands. We had a booking agent, and we just played everywhere. And back in those days, you would do like a week run in a place. You do like 5 or 6 nights in one place, which is almost unheard of now. But we did that mostly in the American South, actually, which was a little awkward at times. Well, we never really had a lot of problems, but the 60s were a very strange time in America, racially. But I mean, music crosses bridges, people come out because we would play these white clubs in the South, but people like the music. They come out and dance and it was fine. We didn't really get a lot of blatant racism. I think there was one place we weren't allowed to go in because we liked to shoot pool, and this one place wouldn't let us in or something. But other than that, yeah, those, like I said, you didn't really, other than play music, you sort of during the day, we'd get together and talk about what we're going to play that night. It wasn't like it wasn't like we were out like shaking up the world or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 years of that, and it grew. It went to different artists. At one point, there was a jazz organist named Jack McDuff. That was one of the last things I did during that period. Did a couple other things, decided to go back and go to school because career-wise, I was playing all the time, but I had bigger dreams than what I was living at the time. So I thought one step is to go and get a bit more educated musically, and so I did that. Went to it was a 2-year community college program. They had an amazing music department, however. And so I did that, started learning about harmony and all the other aspects of music for the first time. And I was about to transfer to a 4-year school, and a former friend, well, a friend, period, not a former friend, had become Zappa's tour manager. And I was somewhat familiar with some of Frank's music, and he called up asking if I wanted to do an audition with Zappa. And it was like, there was 2 drummers at the time, actually. So I went out, and like I say, my audition was probably different from a lot of stories you hear. We just jammed for over an hour. We just played, just went from style to style to style. And he wanted to augment what was already happening. He wanted a bit more funk, I guess, as he called it, a street feel in the band.
Right.
So I was there for that. I was sort of second drummer. And he liked my playing. And so we just jumped straight into rehearsals, and a month of rehearsals, getting ready for the first tour, and it was just suddenly was a whole nother ball, a whole nother league.
So if I understand the timeline right, that was right after his, I think, Apostrophe and Overnight Sensation.
Exactly. Roxy and Elsewhere was the first thing I did.
Yeah, and I got to say, Ralph Humphrey is such a phenomenal drummer.
He was amazing. He just passed away recently, unfortunately, but.
Did he? Oh my goodness! I heard he was in hospice. I never heard this.
Oh, he wrote a beautiful letter on Facebook, just saying goodbye to everybody that he played with. It was amazing, actually. And then, he was gone soon after.
Oh no! Okay, yeah, we had him on the show years ago. I need to break that out and share that, because Ralph Humphrey. Yeah, no offense, Chester, but Ralph Humphrey was my favorite Zappa drummer of all time. He was amazing. He was. His fills, the way that his instrumentation, the way it worked in, the rolling was.
For me to play together with him was a really great opportunity to really go a little deeper in what I did. The funny thing is, I've heard from both of Frank's sons, from Dweezil, who I got to be friends with. I never really met Ahmet, but I guess he runs the family company now. And I've heard from several people, including Gail before she passed. Apparently, Frank said I was his favorite drummer out of all of them.
Wow.
Which blew me away. It totally blew me away. So I was only like not quite 2 years.
So Roxy and Elsewhere is one of my absolute highlights of Zappa. I'm a Zappa nerd, and I key into so many of his different artistic phases. But if there's someone who wants to learn about Zappa, I generally start them with Roxy and Elsewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Now, that album was recorded live, obviously at the Roxy, but It sounds like there was a lot of overdubs, a lot of post work. What do you recall about that?
Not for me. I just did my parts, and I guess they held up. I'm pretty sure he went and touched up stuff. I'm sure he did. The last part of it was a different concert. It was a university concert we did, More Trouble Every Day, where that came from. And I think there were some other tracks from that concert as well. Those I don't know that those would have been touched up. It would have been a lot harder to pull that off. Well, I guess you could still kind of match the ambient sound, but the Roxy is a pretty intimate club, so it's not quite like being in a studio, but that would have been a lot easier to punch in and fix things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've seen the recent Roxy and Elsewhere reissues, Roxy by Proxy and everything. I imagine that brought in.
I've not kept up with much of that, to be honest.
Oh no, okay. They released the video.
Well, I saw the movie. I've got that. But the other stuff, Frank would have never released most of that, first of all. And the family, Frank was incredibly fair to all his musicians. You would never do anything for him and you weren't paid fairly for it. As the family has released all of this stuff that they never paid a dime to anybody. And I know I got to know Frank well enough to realize that some of that stuff he would never have put out, until he got a chance to finish it. And that was my way of just steering clear of the whole thing. So no, I've not kept up with that stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, look, for archivist nerds like myself, it's wonderful to see those, but I could imagine, it's there's some mixed emotions.
It's a bit of a sore spot for me. So
okay. All right. Now, moving to Los Angeles with your discipline around not drinking and, being fairly conservative in terms of a lifestyle, if that's a fair way to put it. And then being plunked right in the middle of the Zappa universe in Hollywood at the time. Was that troubling at all? Were there any sort of clashes?
No, not at all. I mean, people got the quickest way to get kicked out of that band is to get caught doing drugs. Mm-hmm. Frank had no tolerance for that whatsoever. And, people, not saying nobody ever did anything, but when it came to work, it was work. Nobody messed with that. Nobody ever. And a lot of that didn't appeal to me. I lived in LA, but I wasn't part of the Hollywood scene by any means. I'm just wired. That's not what I was used to or that interested in. I had friends, lots of friends in different aspects of it. Only time I would really be involved in industry stuff is if, I was more involved in that through Genesis than any of the other stuff. Because, they were really being pushed and the albums were really, singles were really getting hot and stuff. And so I did not occasionally have to come into town for something, with that stuff. But I never really hung out in the Hollywood scene. That just didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, I know Frank was very, the band was always had very high expectations on them. But there was always such a circus around Frank. It just seemed like that next outer level seemed, maybe I'm not understanding it.
Well, for me, it's almost 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the thing that pushes my buttons is variety and moving on to the next thing. And Frank was probably absolutely the best school I ever went to. But I've never kept up with the culture, right? Nappy, Napoleon Manfred Brock still makes a very good living doing Frank's music all over the world, And man, God bless him. It's like, 'cause he's amazing at it, and I get it. I do get it. I left there and went straight into Weather Report, which was much, which was really more where I'm coming from in my musical concept and all of that. And Frank, I let him know. Well, Frank canceled the tour, and I didn't know enough people to have work. And so when it worked out, and Alfonso Johnson and I had been friends for years and years, long before any of this stuff. And he was playing bass with Weather Report, and it was like the guys went down and said, "Man, come down and jam with the guys," And it was like turned out to be an audition, which I didn't really want to do, but they liked my playing, and I ended up going out with them. And I let Frank know. It's like, and once I played, and that did happen to be my very favorite band in the world at the time, and I let Frank know that I wouldn't be coming back. And he knew, he knew me well enough. He really knew his players, and we stayed friends. We crossed paths on several occasions, and he was always very warm and friendly to me. And it was like, I count that a rare privilege, because he could, not everybody can say that,
Oh, yeah. Oh, he sounds like an incredible mentor. So joining Weather Report, now you joined with Alfonso Johnson as a bass player.
Right.
Who was in Weather Report at that time? Hey there, all you record nerds. I want to tell you about BagsUnlimited.com. BagsUnlimited.com has a huge selection of vinyl record supplies. Whether you collect LPs, 7-inch singles, 78 shellacs, or anything in between, BagsUnlimited.com will sort you out. From polyline sleeves to cardboard record mailers to 7-inch storage boxes and archive quality record sleeves, protect your records of any size and shape at BagsUnlimited.com. Whether you have a small personal record collection, or you're running a massive record shop, you can grab a small supply or even buy in bulk at bagsunlimited.com. And they've got some really incredible, unique stuff. Bagsunlimited.com even has special size sleeves made especially to protect your box sets, storage boxes and sleeves for cassette tapes, protective supplies for reel-to-reel, and yes, even 8-tracks. Just go to bagsunlimited.com, click on audio supplies, and prepare to be impressed by all the options they have. That's bagsunlimited.com. Hey there, I gotta tell you about the Groove Washer. Not because I have to, but because I want to. The Groove Washer is the best record cleaner you can get. And if you have a vinyl collection, you need to keep it clean. Dirt and dust lead to groove wear, which affects the sound and value of your record collection. Use the Groove Washer to clean before each play, and your ears and future pocketbook will thank you. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store, or go direct to groovewasher.com and use promo code VinylGuide10 at checkout. Groove Washer is a great holiday gift. Why not send one to a friend? groovewasher.com, discount code VinylGuide10. Do it now.
Please support the Vinyl Guide sponsors. Now, back to the show.
So joining Weather Report, now you joined with Alphonso Johnson as a bass player.
Right.
Who was in Weather Report at that time?
Well, Joe and Wayne, of course, they are Weather Report, the two of them. Joe's Wayne Shorter. Originally there was a Brazilian percussionist named Alirio Lima, who was a percussionist at the time. Eventually, Alex Acuna came in on percussion. When I left, he moved over to drum set with Jaco. When for the next album, Heavy Weather, I did Black Market, the album before Heavy Weather. And then Alex was the drum, went from percussion to drum. They brought in a different percussionist. But that was, like I said, we had toured for a year prior to recording Black Market, and it was just a really rich time. Oh my goodness, it was an amazing time to be in that.
What was it like working with Wayne Shorter?
Oh goodness, I mean, talking about a true master. Well, him and Joe both. They were the perfect combination. They were the perfect marriage because they were polar opposites. Wayne was pretty deep, pretty intellectual, this wicked sense of humor. He was they were both hilarious, actually. Wayne was maybe, I was going to say a little harder to get to know, but not really. He was just so different because Joe was so outgoing and extroverted, and Wayne was actually pretty introverted. And musically, I mean, they were both incredible. They were. So yeah, working with Wayne was. I would close my eyes and play and just be thrilled about what I'm hearing going on around me. It's like, when we recorded Black Market, it was like, oh man, it was just magical.
The songs on Black Market, were those created in the studio? Were those compositions that were being worked out while playing live?
By the time we hit the studio, they were pretty complete. They were both master composers, and we rehearsed before going into the studio, like learning the material. There's another drummer on 1.5 tracks, Narada Michael Walden. They gave him credit for Black Market, the song Black Market, the first song, but in actual fact, it's my track on the first half, and then it changes field in the middle of the song. And if you were really listening, you would hear that it's a different day of recording.
Oh.
It goes to the middle section of the song. And then there was a ballad that he played beautifully, that he played. Basically, the whole thing changed. Alfonso ended up leaving. There's some business issues, but Alfonso left. They brought Jaco in. I was out of town. We'd taken a Christmas break, and I'd gone back to Baltimore to see family. When I came back, suddenly Jaco was in the band. And they assumed that I was quitting the band along with Alfonso because we were so close. And that's what the two of them did. That's what Joe and Wayne did. They quit their gigs to start Weather Report.
Right.
Joe was with Cannonball Adderley, and Wayne was with Miles Davis. So they quit to start Weather Report. Alfonso and I had been friends, just like their friendship, years and years, really close. So they assumed that when he left, I was going with him. So they asked Jaco, who do you want to play drums? And he suggested Michael Narada Walden, or Narada Michael Walden. And so when I got back in town, it was very chaotic, very, very strange times, actually. Jaco and I played together on 2 of the songs. I didn't tour with him after that. After that, it didn't work out for Narada Michael Walden, but that's when they had Alex move over to drum set.
So there was a bit of overlap with you and Jaco as well.
Only just the 2 songs. Yeah, I think maybe 1 or 2 rehearsals, and we just did not lock in together well at all.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel the record label, as Columbia, that they supported this growth of fusion? Was it a...
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, that period of time, the 70s. And Weather Report was very much, in a class of their own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely the early days of fusion, but they were kind of ahead of the game, I think, Mm-hmm. And so they definitely had major, and at one point while I was in the group, they ended up going with the same management as Earth, Wind and Fire. So we actually did a tour opening for Earth, Wind and Fire while I was at Weather Report. We mostly played to people coming in to see Earth, Wind and Fire, but there would be a few hundred, Weather Report fans that would get there early to see us. But
okay, so the guys in Genesis learned about you through Weather Report. Is that
combination of Zappa and Weather Report?
Okay.
First day of Genesis rehearsal, first thing Phil wanted to know is how do you play the fill, which is from More Trouble Every Day, which showed up in a Genesis song called Afterglow, the live version. And but Phil happened to come to what turned out to be the last concert I did, which was in London with Weather Report. And so he had seen me play with them, and then so when he needed, when he was out front, Bill Bruford did the first tour because they were still auditioning singers and realized that he was going to be the singer. So him and Bill were friends, and Bill stepped in and did it. And then the following year, Bill had other plans. He hadn't really made any plans to stay with them, Mm-hmm. And so it was not quite last minute, but it was getting close to the wire when they needed to start rehearsals and get ready for a tour, and I got the call to do that.
So moving into Genesis, which the tour, I believe it was where Seconds Out was recorded. Is that right? Yeah,
the first tour I did was all UK. We just literally circled the island. We played places that were never meant to have music in them,
Mm-hmm.
Place big enough to get a crowd of people. That's where we played, It was this was like 1977, so it's, But it was, it was really amazing. I really, really enjoyed the music. It was very challenging. Obviously not like Frank's, but again, I had so much experience with odd times and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the hallmarks of prog rock is the odd times, and the songs are in movements, of course. Like very, very similar to orchestral music.
Yeah,
and that was very new for me. So I really, really enjoyed that.
Did you have to change up your style a bit to be able to do Phil's drum parts?
Absolutely, yeah. And this is before drum machines. Mm-hmm. And my personal concept is that when drum machines happened, everything got so homogenized because everybody's like hearing these same patterns and writing to these drum machines and stuff like that and incorporating them. But it was very British in those days. I mean, it was, you could hear it and know, you knew immediately this is definitely an English group. I mean, in those days, you could hear the cultures, It's like, I don't know if you've been to the States or what it's like there, but I used to enjoy traveling to different regions because every region had its own food, had its own everything. Now everything's the same. We got the same chain restaurants everywhere, and it's crazy now, But even musically, everything had a real sense of identity in those days.
Yeah. So you're doing the mainly the live drumming for Genesis. Phil still did the majority of the studio work. Yes, he
did all the studio work. Yeah.
So as you're doing tour to tour, you're hearing new albums, new music coming. You could tell there's an evolution of the Genesis sound.
Oh, absolutely.
What was your perspective on that?
I feel like they learned how to. I don't think they ever compromised the musical integrity of what they did. I think they just learned how to say it with shorter songs. And I think they reached a point where it didn't take 10, 12, 15 minutes to make a point, because the quality of the music, I felt like, really stayed very high. But they, as opposed to what would be a theme to be added to, they were able to realize, oh, this is a complete song. That's my take on it. I have no idea how they felt about it, but looking on, and because some of the music was just so fresh and different from everything else that was out. And almost every album, there still would be like one prog piece, which was like, sort of an epic, there would still
a nod to their roots.
Yeah, there was always that as well. But even that over the years, but the writing just got more sophisticated, more to the point, more accessible for one. Yeah. I remember the first time there was a real hit single. And the guys came back, we came backstage after the show, and the guys going, man, there's girls out there. Because there were never any women in the audience. It was always like, 90% guys with the prog stuff.
Yeah. So you could see the progression, not only in the fans, record sales, but also touring numbers, bigger and bigger places, more nights.
All the above. And they had one of the better artist management relationships I've ever seen. Tony Smith, their manager, was really a member of the band, really. They had a really, I've seen some disaster stories with management and artists and stuff, and man, they were all in sync, and they really listened to him, and he really listened to them. And in those days, record companies believed in developing artists. Now, if you don't have success your first time out, they're done with it.
Yeah. Now, in recent years, well, probably recent decades, there's been a strong desire for a Genesis reunion, even with Gabriel, and I don't think anything really materialized on that. Were you involved in any of those discussions at all?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I was the janitor.
Oh, well, I think you've been promoted far above that.
But I mean, I was an employee, and they
right.
They would call up. I mean, I thought it'd be good for a tour or two. I never dreamed that would be part of something like that for 30 years.
Yeah. What was the biggest show you ever played?
As far as numbers would have been that When in Rome thing. They claimed that there were 500,000 people there.
Holy moly.
I don't know. Well, it was free for one. It was subsidized by the big telecommunications company there in Rome. I guess they covered all of Italy. I don't remember the name of it, but they made it free for everybody, and of course, I guess it worked for them as far as, I think they gave out a lot of literature to everybody that came in free, but they couldn't really monitor who was there because it was at, what's the name? Circus Maximus in English, where the chariot races used to be in Roman ancient, which is pretty massive. I mean, if you think about it, a chariot race, that's a lot. That's got to be a really big space, And it was completely full. I mean, there's no way to know how many people it was. I just remember just at dusk, just before it fully got dark, it was just people as far as you could see. I mean, you couldn't see the end of it, which was pretty amazing. Of course, once it's totally dark, you only, you can only see the first few rows. You have no idea until there's a ballot and they all light up the phones or lighters or whatever, and then and then again, it's like it's overwhelming how big. We played several times for 100,000, which is, I mean, that's still, it's amazing. It's really amazing just to get that many people. Just with one purpose, all coming together. That's the beauty of music, I guess.
Yeah, all that whole crowd on one wavelength. You've no doubt played for presidents, the UK royal family. Any particular memories that? Yeah.
Well, we did the Princess Trust a few times, which is now King Charles. Basically he had organized this thing. Each of the groups, all the English groups, would agree to do a concert and donate all of the proceeds to his charity, which provided arts and education for the poorer districts around the country. which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, I think everybody agreed that that was a very worthwhile thing to do, because they supported arts as well as education and stuff. And so they would always attend, and it was very, so I got to meet, Charles and Diana on a couple of occasions, and those were really kind of cool. I mean, there's definitely a vibe there,
Wow. You've had an amazing career playing with these very central composers or these central personalities. And now when you come to a project like Wake Up Call, which is your project, how is that different for you? Well, hey there, record collectors. There's a new service available that specializes in record cleaning, restoring, sticker removal, and professional grading.
VMGvinyl.com.
VMG Vinyl can help you make the most of your collectible records. From professional cleaning of records and sleeves,
Removing old price tags and store stickers.
dry cleaning and rejuvenation of old shrink wrap to make it look like new, even providing you a professional play-tested third-party grade with either removable grading or encasing in plastic. You have a wide range of choices at VMGvinyl.com.
Buying a highly collectible record and you want it checked out by an expert?
VMG Vinyl can do that too. Head over there now and see what VMGvinyl.com can do for you and your collection. That's VMGvinyl.com, the one-stop shop for professional third-party grading, cleaning, and record restoration. That's VMGvinyl.com. You've had an amazing career playing with these very central composers or these central personalities. And now when you come to a project like Wake Up Call, which is your project, how is that different for you?
Well, it's always different when it's yours. A couple of other albums I did, I had a jazz trio for a few years, and we toured Europe and did a couple of albums. It did really well here in the States. Wake Up Call was my very first band that first time I ever had a band, people that are on Wake Up Call in LA. We did it during COVID. So basically I called them up during, start of COVID and just because we remained close friends all these years. Primarily the bass player and keyboard player, they're a married couple, Robert Pee Wee Hill and Michiko Hill. And I guess we were kind of the core of the group, really. And so I just called it and started COVID, say, hey, what are you doing? How's it going? It's like, well, tours were canceled. They toured with their daughter, who's really phenomenal. Judith Hill is her name. And they had a studio that they do out of their house. That's a great studio. They do a lot of records for a lot of people. And so that start of the pandemic, like they were saying, well, nobody's booking the studio. Tours are all canceled. We're just sitting around jamming with the drum machine, And it was like, as I've said in other interviews, it's like, well, literally, I said, don't do that. Let me send you something to jam with. And I sent them the first track, which is track 3 on the recording, called Hide and Seek. That was the first thing I sent them, just thinking there was something for them to just fool around with. They sent back to me a completed track that they had done around it. Totally blew me away. I was not expecting it to freak me out, basically. It was like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, how in the world did you come up with that? And they said, well, we just went where you led it. Well, we did spend more time together than any other band I've ever been in. That short time we were together, which was between tours, basically. I ended up having to go on tour again, and we never really fully got it going again. But we ate together several times a week. They'd be over at my place, and we rehearsed all the time. We started writing together. That was my real introduction to trying to write songs and that. But so basically, the whole album was done by me singing them a drum track, and then writing around the drum track and sending it back. Now, there were a couple of the songs where I, suggested melodies as well, because I heard specific melodies with the parts I sang. But again, they would develop that and take it even further than I even imagined, So it's for a drummer, a lot of times you're kind of sitting there and you're just jamming by yourself, and you think, man, I wish I had a song I could play this groove in. But I got to do that because I played the groove first. So basically I just played these wacky grooves, different things that would come up. It took over a year because things did start to get busy later, and then they were getting busy and I was doing other stuff as well. But it took took a little over a year to get all the tracks completed. And we brought in other people, of course, the two, Caleb Quaid, one of the guitarists who did a lot of work with Elton back in Elton's early career. Another guitarist named Ronnie Van, who did a bunch of Motown stuff when they moved to LA. My son is on 3 of the guitar tracks, playing guitar. And saxophone player Sheila Gonzalez was in Dweezil's band. And,
that's right. She's incredible.
Yeah, she is. And Jeff Coffin, the other saxophone player, is in Dave Matthews Band. You know, he lives here in Nashville, and we do a lot of gigs together. He's an amazing player, actually.
So why was the album called Wake Up Call? I mean, I know there's a title track of it. Why was that the one for the headline?
Oh goodness, probably for the sound of the title as much as anything. And Wake Up Call, I mean, if you've ever been on tour, if you do a tour, it's like one of the most valuable things on the tour is your wake up call, because you got to be up and you got to make that flight or that bus call or whatever it is. You know, I also think of it in terms of, in fact, I think more of it in terms of, you know, there are sort of road marks in your life where it just sort of changes everything. Like, it's like, whoa, that's a wake-up call. In my case, I had a very severe leg injury about a year ago. I couldn't walk. I literally could not walk, and I had to go into a rehab hospital. And I've had plenty of physical therapy. I'm back. I'm fine now. I'm playing, and everything's really. I'm very grateful. Okay, but when you can't walk, that's a major wake-up call. You know what I'm saying? You can't take life for granted anymore. Beyond when that happens, it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, you know. And it, you know, basically, it's an overuse injury. It was an overuse injury. It's much my own fault as anything. I've always been very active. A lot of tennis, rollerblading was always my go-to thing to do. And for a couple of years, I just stopped doing everything. But I would go out and play them really intense, but the muscles were no longer loose and limber and, you know, and prepared. And I think because I would still really dig in really hard when I played, but the muscles weren't being continuously exercised, I think that's what brought the injury. I think that's what made me, you know, put me in a position where this injury could happen, you know. And I mean, the moral of the story is don't ever stop exercising. I don't care how old you are or what your situation is. The body is a machine. And, you know, if you let your car sit around and never drive it, the tires are going to go bad. The hoses are going to go bad, you know. We need to be active, you know. And I've known that intellectually, but now I know it in a very practical way, you know, because I've had to sort of deal with the effects of not doing that, you know.
I've spoken to several drummers who had to learn a different way of playing partway through their career because early in the career, they didn't have the right technique or form, and they found themselves suffering later on and had to almost relearn how to hold sticks and things like that.
Right. Well, I taught for 20 years at a university here in Nashville. During that period, several students in the course of the day, you know, a couple of days a week, and observing them. And I've always been a real stickler for posture. I've always sat up pretty straight behind the kid. I've never liked to play hunched over like that. My head will be down sometimes because I'm just focused and listening, but I try not to ever just do that. And I believe in keeping everything ergonomic within reach. At one point I tried the high cymbals and it looks really flashy and cool, but it hurt. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. My rule of thumb is even my grip, if it hurts, I don't do it anymore. The moment it's uncomfortable, it's like, okay, that no longer works. And I just instinctively somehow, I guess, fortunately would know, no, we're not doing it this way anymore. And over the years, I've settled into things that were now everybody's a bit different. So some of the things that work, but even when I was teaching, I would be a real stickler with my students for posture. How are you holding the sticks? Because if you can really work against yourself, you know, and I've been a stickler for that. Certainly no authority on it, but been doing it for a living for 62 years now. So it's like something's been working. But no, but the bottom line, and I've never sat really low. I always sat so that my legs angled down a bit, because that's the natural we're made. That's, I know guys that are really tall and sit really low and the knees are above the waist, and I can't, because my legs will just cramp up if I do that. But so I don't even like to be level. I need to angle it just down just a bit. I used to sit extremely high. Since the injury, I've had to come down a bit, but I still sit higher than most.
Okay. And you've got a schedule of live gigs coming up? You still hitting the road?
Well, I'm probably doing I do as much recording from home as anything these days. I've got contacts in a lot of places, and I'll get contacts and send out drum tracks and stuff. The Unitopia thing that I did all my drum tracks I've done from home and stuff. And, but yeah, there's a few things coming up. Just had a beautiful gig a week ago here in Nashville with that same Jeff Coffin, the saxophone player. He put together this amazing band, and I've got a couple of things. I'm just starting to book things in my own name again. Like I said, I pretty much lost the previous year, and just trying to rest and fully recover. So now I'm calendar starting to fill up, and I'll start booking gigs under my own name again.
All right. Well, God bless you, Chester. I'm glad you're feeling better. All right. So you've got Wake Up Call. It's progrock.com's Essentials. Talk to me about this label. How did you get involved with them?
Well, through Unitopia. Like I said, I was approached asking would I, record this album with Unitopia. I wasn't able to complete all the tracks, unfortunately, because of what I went through. And, but, now Alfonso Johnson, my bass player friend, is on there as well. And when I heard it, it was like, because they reached out and it was like, well, let me hear what's going on. And when I heard the song, it's like, oh man, yeah, I definitely want to be a part of this. Brilliant writing. And it's interestingly enough, with what I've gone through physically, all the songs on that album, on the 7 Chambers, is to do with various ailments and illnesses that happen as you get older. Okay. 2 of the guys had heart attacks. One guy's had cancer. A couple of them had cancer. One of the guys was a retired burn surgeon. And so the lyrics are really, they're not preachy. They're very cleverly done. On the tour, we did a European tour, and there were people coming up after some of the songs saying, thank you. Like they didn't know that anybody understood what I went through, because they did it in a wonderfully poetic kind of way. So anyway, through that, when it was time to go on tour, let the label manager know that I also had a project I'd been doing. He wanted to hear it. And he suggested, man, how about we put it out, and that way it can be included with merch on the tour, which we did. And which I thought was very gracious, because I've always just put my own stuff out, but he's able to promote it in a way I've just had never done properly. And I've had pretty good response from it. It's all instrumental. Some people don't like instrumental music, but the people that have heard it, I'd say I've had overall pretty positive feedback from it. And I think I'm more proud of it than anything else I've ever done.
Wow.
I really am. Yeah. I mean, the players in the band, just what beautiful people. I mean, not just fantastic musicians, but just a band full of really dear friends. I mean, we laughed every day, all day. I mean, and you can't beat that in a band situation, If you're not laughing, then you need to look at what's going on around you. I mean, some tours and that, and even touring with the guys in Unitopia, it was a hard tour. We did van rides and stuff. It was definitely no charter jets and hotel suites, but so much fun. And like the music, again, just really great. So it's like this new family I'm a part of,
Right. Now with this new album, it's on CD. Do you see it being pressed for vinyl in the future?
Vinyl's out, dude. I'll make sure you get one.
Oh, okay. I've
got the vinyl. It was interesting because it's like by vinyl these days, it used to be, remember they used to say AAA or AAD.
Yeah. DDD was the mark of excellence.
All digital, right? Well, now it's DDA because it's all digital, and then it goes to analog vinyl, But at the same time, still with that, and I finally invested in a really good cartridge, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm really loving my collection. I'm like really digging deeper into vinyl than I've been in years, because it's all about the cartridge. I mean, I didn't get like the top of the line stuff because those are like thousands and thousands of dollars. But I got a really good one, and all of a sudden it just, the tracks come alive, and they got that extra warmth that you get from vinyl. So I would love to get one to you. I'll talk to you guys and see if we can get my and also the Unitopia vinyl as well. I'd
love that. Look at progrock.com. They've got some incredible records. So I enjoy their taste. Are you surprised that vinyl's made a comeback? Was it a surprise for you?
I am. I'm shocked. It's way better than it used to be, however. The new stuff is definitely different. I mean, I hated that. I never I used to hate that stuff, and my son would, he would buy a plug-in when he was producing something just to make it sound like vinyl. It's like, it's like, I hate that sound. But, it all comes back around, doesn't it? Clothes, music, the whole thing,
Yeah, lucky for us. I think.
Yeah, well, like I say, I think the vinyl, the heavier vinyl, all that, I think is much improved now,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I remember I used to spend $2 for an album. That's not the case anymore.
No, it's not. Yeah, those days are gone.
Right.
But yeah, okay. Well, that's great because I've heard the digital file's a wake up call. I'd love to hear the vinyl.
I think. Well, if you like it, I think you'll like the vinyl.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, that's my main. I mean, I barely.
I see. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm impressed. Nice.
All right. Well, Chester, thank you so much for your time. You've inspired me on multiple levels, including the fact that I do have to go out for a run today. So I'll keep that exercising, keep those joints loose and liquid, and hopefully
use it or lose it.
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And the only thing that's getting in my own way is me. So
I think we can all relate to that.
Again, thank you so much. And I want to remind folks, Chester's latest album, Wake Up Call, is available at progrock.com. I'll put some links in this episode page where you can order the vinyl copies. Again, Chester, please come back and share anytime you've got a new project. It was absolutely an honor to have you on the show.
Well, I will absolutely do that. It's great meeting you. And look forward to hanging out online again, hopefully in person one of these days as well. I haven't been there in years, man. I'd love to get back down there.
Hey, you're more than welcome. I got a couch you can crash on if needed. So
there you go.
No problem. Hope you like dogs. Okay. Take care, Chester. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again for your time.
Okay, Nate. You too, man. Take care. All the best.
Cheers. Oh, man, he's such a pleasant dude. He's so humble. He's such a good guy. I like Chester. He's welcome back anytime. Don't forget, folks, chesterthompson.bandcamp.com. Wake Up Call is available on vinyl. It's only $25. Plus, there's an extended version of this interview only available to show patrons. Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Head up there now, help support the show, and enjoy all the extras. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you folks who are sharing these episodes on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, and in the Reddit forums and Facebook groups. I truly appreciate that. And those of you who are leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, well, I want to give a big thank you as well. That is huge and totally rocks. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Follow The Vinyl Guide in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use and enjoy the full back catalog of episodes of The Vinyl Guide podcast. Thanks again for listening.